Hello, America. This is Jonathan Arias, landlord attorney with the Onyx Group and Buyer Rented Profit. I got another video for you today, and it is a little messy, and I'm going to do my best. Y'all pray for me. Pray for me, y'all. I'm going to do my best to keep it neutral. But there's so much going on in this case, and I wanted to bring this case to you because there's a lot to learn here. And I'm going to go step by step. And there's things that landlords can learn about how to handle this. Number one, they found a landlord attorney. And that's why I think they're in the position they're in. This individual's landlord. So let's read here. Delray Beach single mom forced to sleep in her car due to eviction. That I'm gonna stay neutral, but there's spin here. Let's go through the article, then we'll watch the video, then we'll go through the actual case and what's happened. A new study by the National Low Income Housing Coalition revealed that minimum wage workers have to work 86 hours each week in order to be able to afford a one-bedroom rental home in Florida. Contact 5 spoke with a woman in Delray Beach who works more than that and is being priced out of her home. All right. So, okay. So let's talk about this. Okay. I'm going to stay neutral here. Let's just keep going. This is my next home, Katie Rister told Contact 5 while sitting in her car. In 6 days, Rister will be forced to move out of her Delray Beach home with nowhere to go. It's stressful. I'm blessed that I have this to sleep in. Without this, I'd be out on the street. She's talking about her car. Rister told Contact 5 she fell behind in rent in June, even while working 2 jobs and 90 hours a week. Then she learned her lease was being terminated. After that, she got an eviction notice. In an email sent to Contact 5, her landlord's attorney said, now this is what I want you to pay attention to. This is a professional. When I read this, I read through quickly and I didn't realize I thought it was the landlord. And I was like, wow, this landlord is on his stuff. Then I went back and I was like, oh, it's the attorney. Makes sense. Check this out. Miss Rister was on a month-to-month tenancy and was timely served a notice of termination on May 23rd, 2022, that the tenancy would not be renewed and will be terminated on June 30th, 2022. Under Florida law, the landlord has a right to timely terminate a tenancy without reason. However, the property requires plumbing maintenance, whereby the flooring will need to be removed and the unit will be uninhabitable during that time. Ms. Rister failed to pay rent for June and failed to timely vacate on June 23rd, 2022, and was thus a holdover tenant. The tenant entered into a settlement agreement and requested that the move-out date be August 11, 2022, which the landlord obliged. As part of the settlement, Palm Beach County Housing Assistance agreed to pay the landlord on behalf of the tenant the outstanding rent for June, July, and per diem for August. These are amounts that the landlord was owed under the law. The landlord also waived additional amounts which it is entitled for a holdover tenancy and its attorney's fees and costs. Let me talk about this real quick. So the law says that if you have a holdover tenant, what is a holdover tenant? Somebody who has a tenancy for a specific term, let's just say August 30th. Then they stay after August 30th, they're thus holding over. They're staying beyond the term that they've agreed to. The law in Florida says that at that point, that landlord is entitled to double rent for that holdover tenant. Thus, in this case, when this attorney says that the landlord also waived additional amounts which it is entitled to for a holdover tenancy, it's talking about that. Also, attorney's fees and costs under the law, Florida Statute Chapter 83, the prevailing party, which in this case would be the landlord, will be entitled to have their attorney's fees and court costs, which include filing fees, summons, and serving the tenant. Those would be covered by the statute as well. It says Rister said that the eviction has now lowered her credit score and she can't get approved for a new place. Her two boys are staying with family while she tries to figure out what to do. The worst part is being away from the kids and having the kids somewhere else. Rister said, when you have to say goodnight and I love you over the phone every day instead of just walking in the room, it's hard. According to a new study by the National Low Income Housing Coalition, minimum wage workers like Rister have to work 86 hours each week in order to afford a modest one-bedroom rental home. It's staggering, it's stunning, it's unrealistic expectation, Maura Planty said, with Living Hungry said. Now, let's be clear. In this case, this was not a modest one-bedroom rental home. It wasn't anything out of this world, but it was a 3-1. Furthermore, we'll see that this tenant was paying $1,300 a month, which for South Florida is actually very decent. Now, the landlord did have a right to terminate the lease, which it appears that the landlord was going to do, but this tenant also failed to pay rent for June and July. We'll get into that in a second. Planting works to help people like Rister who are being priced out of their homes by finding them temporary housing. We're not alone. Even Palm Beach County is not alone. Collier County, other counties that have this wealthy upper group that is utilizing the services of low-income people, Planty said. And where's the hope? Have we hit a corner? Are we turning a corner? Have we made it into the recession? I'm not feeling like we're out of this. We are definitely not out of this. This is just the very tip, Miss Planty. These are questions Rister is also asking while evaluating the resources available to help people like her. We're getting priced out of paradise. I got to touch on that. There is no entitlement to live in South Florida. If you consider this paradise, that's, yeah, people are getting priced out, but people want to live here. I lived in the Midwest. That's where I went to law school. It sucked from November to end of March. It sucked. And now with remote work, people don't have to live in the Midwest. They don't have to live up north. They're coming down here. They have salaries from the up north, northeast. And they're coming down here. They're like, oh, it's less expensive and I'm 5 minutes from the water. Heck yeah. So she says, I'm ready to throw a dart at a map and just go once my kids graduate from high school, Rister said. A GoFundMe has been created to help Rister and her two sons. Let's listen to the actual story, and I have a few other things to touch on.
It's a nice neighborhood. It's quiet. 3 bedrooms, 1 bath.
In just 6 days, Katie Rister will be trading this.
This is my next home temporarily for the next 2 or 3 months.
For 4 wheels.
It's stressful. I'm just blessed that I have this to sleep in. Without this, I'd be on the street.
Rister says she fell behind in rent back in June.
Money talks.
Even while working as a barista and a janitor.
It's scary.
90 hours a week, and then learned her lease was being terminated. After that came an eviction notice for failure to pay rent.
Oh, it's stressful.
Rent that has since been paid by Palm Beach County Housing Assistance.
What was the reason for the eviction?
The landlord wasn't willing to negotiate anything. He just wanted us out.
In an email, her landlord's attorney tells Contact 5, under Florida law, the landlord has a right to timely terminate a tenancy without reason. However, the property requires plumbing maintenance, whereby the flooring will need to be removed and the unit will be uninhabitable during that time.
It's sad to say goodbye.
The problem for Rister,
it sucks.
She says the eviction lowered her credit score and she can't get approved for a new place.
The worst part is being away from the kids and having the kids somewhere else. Like when you have to say good night and I love you over the phone every day instead of just walking in the room, it's hard.
According to a new study by the National Low Income Housing Coalition, minimum wage workers like Rister have to work 6 hours each week to afford a modest 1-bedroom rental home right now in Florida.
What do you think about that?
It's staggering. It's stunning. It's an unrealistic expectation.
Maura Plant with Living Hungry, based in Palm Beach County, works to help people who are being priced out of their homes find temporary housing.
We're not alone. Even Palm Beach County is not alone. You know, Collier County, other counties that have this wealthy upper group that is utilizing the services of low income people, you're always having this push pull. And where's the hope? right? Have we hit a corner? Are we turning a corner? You know, have we made it into this recession? You know, I'm not feeling like we're out of this.
We're getting priced out of paradise. I'm ready to throw a dart at a map and just go once my kids graduate from high school.
But for now,
At least I have something to protect me at night. It's a small sedan in here.
Rister will be calling this small space home
It's not the same as stretching out and sleeping in your bed.
while she tries to find another solution. In Delray Beach, I'm Contact 5 consumer investigator Jessica.
Okay. So let me talk about a few things. Number one, this totally sucks. I don't wish this on anybody. Money is tight for everybody. Inflation is hitting everybody. It sucks. And she's a single mother with 2 kids. This sucks. I don't want her to live in her home. I have a lot of questions though. For one, her car looks pretty new and kind of nice. I wonder what if she has a car payment, and I wonder what that car payment is. And if she could get that reduced, sell the car. Now used cars are at, it's kind of a weird situation because you get more for your car, but then you have to buy another car, and that's a tough situation. But I wonder if she could downgrade in car. I wonder if she has monthly payments on her car, and for a used car, they could easily be in the 300-400s, and that could be tough. Let me also say this: it never said that she was a minimum wage worker. I hope not, because to me, I see signs all over the place that say in fast food and in other places that say that they're paying more than minimum wage. Right now, I just did a quick search, and it appears that minimum wage is $11. I see signs for 15 and 16 all over the place. I'm not saying that that's going to cover it. I'm just putting that out there. Now, in this case, she was working 90 hours a week. They said. I put out a calculator. That would be 360 hours a week times 11. If she was a minimum wage employee, she would be right under $4,000 a month, $3,960. I have a kind of a personal rule in finance that, you know, your housing shouldn't be more than 25% of your income. Once you factor in taxes and stuff like that, the person is going to be, if it's $3,960, the individual is going to be under that amount. So let's say they're taking home like $3,300 a month. Then at that point, they're kind of priced out of this property. And so here, let me tell you how much the property was for. So this is the actual complaint for this lawsuit. So initially here, it says in 2018, when they first made the lease, that the monthly payment was $1,200. Thereafter, after the expiration of the initial lease term, they changed it to $1,300, right? So 1,300 times 4 is roughly $5,000. Am I doing that right? 1,300 times 4. 1,300 times 4. Oh, crap. Times 4. 5,200. So I think this was a little too high for her. Now, I guess that's the point of the article. But I hope she wasn't minimum wage. Let me just point one other thing out. So here are the cases against her. We got to point out that they filed suit, Geyser Properties versus her, Catherine Rister, in 2019. In 2019, it was for non-payment of rent as well. Now, this was during COVID, October 1st, 2019. So she failed to pay her rent. This case was resolved via settlement. So they filed in October it was settled a couple days later, right? And that was it. It was everything was dismissed. Shoot, it's like 10 days later. Then we have this current case. It was filed in July of this year. She failed to pay June rent and July rent. And then they settled somewhere down here. And Palm Beach Housing Assistance paid the rent, but she agreed to be out on August 11th. So, you know, it's a little a little stretch of the truth that, you know, you could say she was forced out, but she had no other choice. But she also agreed to the terms, and the landlord allowed her to stay until August 11th. So that's one thing. Last thing I wanted to show you was just the fact here that the complaint. Oh, here we go. The fact here that the complaint, although he was gonna terminate the lease, he had the right to do so. The complaint was just for non-payment of rent. Here it says, oh no, actually, yeah, for holding over, for not paying. Let me make sure I speak correctly. Oh, so they say for both things, for holding over and for not making rent payments. Now this is the last thing. There's a GoFundMe page. This is her and her two boys. Very, very sad. My name is Katie, a single mother of two amazing boys with a full-time job and a second part-time job. Even during COVID, I worked full-time on the front line in a level 1 trauma hospital. We have lived in our rental property for 5 years, and the landlord has not given a reason, but has terminated our month-to-month lease. So, number one, they didn't pay rent in June. Number two, they had to do some repairs on the property, and it's the landlord's right to say, hey, I'm going to terminate this so I could make repairs on the property, or for any reason. They don't have to give reason. But I think some reason was given here. Take it how you want. August 11th is our last day, and we will have nowhere to go. I will be living in my car with the cat and the dog, while the boys have already been separated and will be going to different schools that start August 10th. Priced out of paradise in a society driven by greed. Hopeless, away from my boys, living in the streets. I can pay my rent. I just need a place that has reasonable requirements. With 56% increase in Florida rents, the requirements of 3 times monthly rent is impossible for most families. And that brings me to my point. Oftentimes, most times, it is not that people cannot pay the rent. When we are coming up with agreements, when we're doing evictions and we're coming up with agreements for people, they can move somewhere else and they can afford that rent. But this is the killer for them. This is the killer, because oftentimes people don't have 3 times a monthly rent in savings. Oftentimes, if they're getting evicted, they have 0, and this is the killer. You know, I don't think there's anything anybody could do about it. But you know, if you know all this legislation that's going forth, if they wanted to do something, this is the biggest contributor to homelessness. And I'm not saying it's reasonable. It's totally unreasonable to say, hey, don't, you know, require people to not take in first month, last month security deposit. But the fact that they have to do that means, in this case, let's say she was to go into this property, she didn't have money for June, so that means she doesn't have the 1,300. And to say, okay, now you owe 3,900 to go into a new place, that's what makes it so difficult. And so that's what's going to impede her from going into a new place. That is the key. And so, you know, if we're being honest, if we, you know, as long as people have to pay 3 times monthly rent, it's going to be tough for them to transition to somewhere else. And so oftentimes they do have to, lay up with a family member, or sadly, in this case, she's probably going to be in her car until she saves that amount. And she says it here, I can pay the rent, but it's the 3 times. That's the beast. This was a tough article. I don't mean to come down on a single mother and her kids. It's a tough situation, but I just like to parse through what's really going on. And in my opinion, that makes better landlords, that makes better business owners, multifamily business owners, because we go through and we see how these things really work. It's not just an article that could be sensationalized and different words can be used to spin or to convey certain ideas. In this case, we get down to the nitty gritty and we find out a little bit more about what's going on. I have a lot of questions. I have not spoken to this woman, her attorney, her landlord. So I don't know the specifics. I don't know the conversations that were had, the text messages that were exchanged, or the reality of her situation. She could have been, a super conservative, saving every penny, and just things got too tight. Or there could have been other factors here. There's so much here. I just can touch on the documents and the information that's publicly available, and hopefully my audience can learn something from it. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. I'm Jonathan Arias, landlord attorney with the Onyx Group and Buyer Rented Profit. If you have a need for a landlord attorney, I would love to help you out. Check us out at the onyxgrouplegal.com. Thank you very much, and God bless you.